Hey everyone, welcome back. Just getting caught up here on some of my videos. It seems like I am spending more time with videos than anything, but I'm working as much as I can. So this is the part that I'm kind of focusing on here. It's the section where the control rods, or the stick, for the lack of a better term, basically makes in contact with the 2 points, both fore and aft of the main fuselage there. It was still a little sticky, and so this is just one of those things that we have to keep working on until we get it right. Took a break away from that. My father-in-law came back over, and he's really enjoying helping, so I want to make sure that I include him as much as I can in the project. And I'm always thinking of things that he's able to do. This part here is the seat mechanism that allows it to move forward and aft in the front seat. The rear seat's a fixed position. But I give him some things to do that aren't necessarily as critical, or something I can let him kind of go for a little bit on, because I want to keep working as much as I can. But obviously I'm helping because there's a lot of riveting in this section, and there's a lot of parts that go into the part that releases the pin to keep the seat in position or not, and it has to go together just right. Because if you don't get it together right, then things are not, they don't work quite right. And so what I'm doing here is just finishing up getting this together for, oh, this is the second one. Yeah. So like I was saying, you got to make sure you get it together just right. And in this particular one, we didn't. So we'd already pulled a bunch of rivets, and realized that the guide pins that are inside of that were not hooked in the right position. So we wound up having to take the rivets out to get it released so that we could get it put back together. And just I'm getting really, really good at taking rivets out, and if they don't come out well, then just the fine tuning portion of getting the rivet out without damaging the material on either side. So we get that fixed. Father-in-law went back to peeling some of the skin off the wings, and I went back to working on the fuel lines. For those of you that may have missed some of the earlier videos, in this section here, this is the guides that I had made from a coworker who's got a 3D printer to help keep the fuel lines in alignment as it makes the turn. Because I'm off book at this point in time, this is a little bit of feeling your way through it. There are a number of builders out there, particularly for the Sling, that have done this. And there's this like magic bend. Oh, and that's one of the 3D parts. So I've got a little epoxy on the top there to keep it so that that bolt doesn't slip. But there's a little bit of a trick to it, and I just have not mastered it. So it was a matter of, and that's another shot of the guides in place, and that really does help keep it in place. The problem that I ran into is as I was working through this, and it may be a little bit later in the video, I can't remember exactly where it comes along here, but the bend that I've got right there winds up not being great because it's interfering with the bolts for the wing spars goes together, and then the covers that go over that section don't go quite right. So anyway, so I set that aside for a little bit and went back to doing something that was a little more fun. This is the luggage door, and I wanted to get that squared away because that's been kind of flopping around there for a little bit. So anyway, the other part that's a little, and kind of bugs me a little bit, is the fuel selector section doesn't come until the firewall forward kit, so with the engine. Clearly I'm trying to do as much as I can without putting the side skins on, because once the side skins are on, then everything is reaching down inside versus working from the side. So there's a few things within the manual that I'm like, yeah, well, why is the order the way it is? And then here I'm in the back, and this is the other thing I've wired this rear section at least 3 or 4 different times, pulled a whole bunch of zip ties, realized that it needed a little bit of adjusting, cut all the zip ties off, readjusted it, thinking that, oh, okay, this is it, and put all the zip ties back in. This section here, you can see where I've got the static port put in the aft portion of the airplane. I'm following along with the position that Evan, in one of his more recent videos, had provided guidance on that. So, and again, the manual has that static port being in the nose of the airplane as opposed to in the tail, and I agree with that. You know, you look at most of the airplanes that are out there anymore, and the static ports are towards the back, especially if you go like to a Cessna or something like that. Because I'm doing some special stuff in the back as far as some USB power, I was spending some time trying to get that squared away. And some of this is like there's parts that need to go into place before I know where the final placement is. So I need to be further along with that before I can make that determination. And then I was also adjusting. I'd probably already reinserted the wire after that black wire that's actually a conduit that goes around the wiring harness itself. So that's just help with the guide of that wire, and so it doesn't get caught on things as I pull in and out. It's actually been really handy to do it that way. So back working on the fuel lines again, trying to figure out the best way to route it. And because I don't have the fuel selector, I don't know the placement of it, and I left a fair amount of aluminum or tubing on it. If anybody's building one of these, I would highly recommend just ponying up for the Teflon hoses rather than going with the aluminum, because the Teflon hoses they're flexible, they're going to be similar to what the rubber hoses are, and they've got a lot longer shelf life for being useful in the airplane. And some of this is I don't know what it looks like when I get to that point, so I have to think many steps ahead and try to figure out if that's the best placement. Back to helping my father-in-law's name's Harold. We're working on the rear seat bench at this point in time. We were just trying to figure out exactly the order of some of the structure that it goes together with. And the one part that was a little tricky was there's a angle bracket that we couldn't determine from the plans if it went inside or outside of the seat itself. And you'll see, I'll pull up my iPad here in a minute, and because you can look at the paper print all day long, but you can't necessarily zoom in on it. At least with the iPad, you can zoom in, get a better idea of what the drawing actually says. But even when we did that, it wasn't very clear. So I made the executive decision there's the iPad, and where we're looking to see how that goes together. But I made the executive decision that we were going to put the angle bracket inside. It fit better there. It didn't totally line up, but it was pretty close. So it needed to go on because that's going to be an angle or a structural piece that helps support that turn in the back. But other than that, I mean, the bench went together pretty straightforward. I really didn't have much problem with that. Other than that, the one thing that we did do is we get a little anxious with putting the rear bracket on. I think that's something that we should have probably waited on, but again, these are pulled rivets. It's not terribly difficult to take those out and put them back in if we need to. So anyway, back to the fuel line again. I'm sure my neighbors at this point in time are thinking that I am not working on the airplane because it's been kind of in this state for a good 2 months. So from the casual observer, it looks the same, but there's constantly changes. One of the other recommendations that Midwest had said was to the skin from the factory comes with a hole in it, and it's meant for the transponder. They strongly suggested not putting anything there because when this section of the airplane gets built, it gets very difficult to access. The problem is I've got a hole there, so I need to put something there. So I changed it up. Rather than putting the transponder in that location, I enlarged the hole a little bit so that I could put the COM2 antenna in that position. It required a little bit bigger opening, and of course that would have been nice to know before I put the support structure in there. But this is just all kind of part of the build process. So I got it all squared away. The COM2 antenna is now in that position. I don't expect to be taking it out or off. The other exciting news is the rest of the avionics and wiring harnesses are in. I've got the panel, which looks fantastic, in my office, as well as all the avionics, and then I got the wiring harness out and started figuring out how to try to put that in. It's without knowing exactly how it goes in, it's a little bit of a spider web, I guess. Trying to figure out what turns need to be made where. And now this is where we came. On the seat here, this is the seat back. So reading instructions is really important. Some of this stuff just goes together. You almost don't need to look at the instructions. We got that whole back panel on that seat put together and realized, oh, there's other parts that need to go on there before we rivet it on. So, our bad. I mean, again, it's pretty straightforward. We take the rivets off. It's just the seat back for the rear seat. It's not a super critical component other than, just needs to be structurally sound. So, we took it apart, got back on the right track so we can get the right pieces put on. And we're busy working on here. But anyway, so the wiring, it's been kind of tricky because I want to make sure, obviously you want to get it right. And Midwest builds the wiring harness so that it goes in kind of a particular way. And this is without the harness in yet. I went ahead and took the fuel lines out just to give myself some more room so that I get the wiring in there. Lots of looking at things. So the COM 1 antenna, the GPS, and the Sirius XM antenna, those are interesting because you can't put them aft of the rear portion of the rear seat, so the black box is the luggage chute or whatever in the back of the fuselage. If you install them directly in that position, you'll never be able to access them again. So Midwest recommends installing those forward of that luggage section so that you can access them at a later time. But I have to get the top skins on in order for that to work. So I'm working on that part. And this is where I'm just kind of feeding the line through and sorting out where things need to go. It's been an interesting process. So anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching in the comments. And it's mid-June when I'm recording this, so I'm planning on being at Oshkosh, and we'll definitely be at the Sling Fling. I think if they haven't announced it yet, but I plan on being there when they do. So anyway, we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.